My business partner said, "These recipes made us both riches." Then I found out she had been selling them to our competitor behind my back for 6 months. What happened when I finally fought back destroyed everything we built together. I am typing this at 2 a.m. because I cannot sleep, and I cannot stop replaying the conversation that just blew up my entire life. I still cannot believe this is real. My business partner and ex-girlfriend Madison just told me, "Look, Jake, these recipes made us both rich. You cannot expect me to turn down opportunities forever, just because your dead grandmother wrote them down first." She said this while sitting in my restaurant, eating food made from my family's recipes. After I confronted her about the contract I found in her email, I just stared at her. But what I am about to do next is going to show her exactly what those recipes are worth without me. What happened tonight was just the beginning. Let me back up. I am Jake, 34, and I own Nana's Table, a mid-sized Italian-American restaurant in Portland. Madison, 29, was my girlfriend for 4 years and my business partner for the last 2. She started as a food blogger documenting our restaurant's journey, but we formalized a partnership when her content started driving serious business. Here is what I thought our deal was. Madison handled marketing, social media, and business development. I handled the kitchen, operations, and recipes. We split profits 60-40 me, her, because I owned the restaurant and provided all the recipes. It was working. We were pulling in $800K annual revenue, which for a 40-seat restaurant is damn good. What I didn't know was that Madison had been playing a longer game. 3 weeks ago, I was helping her organize files for our tax prep when I saw an email thread she had forgotten to close. The subject line was exclusive licensing agreement. Nana's signature dishes. My blood went cold. I opened it. Madison had been negotiating with Castellano Restaurant Group, the corporate chain that has been trying to buy me out for 2 years to license 12 of our signature recipes. Not just any recipes. My grandmother's recipes. The ones that made our restaurant famous. The email thread went back 6 months. Madison had started by selling them consultation services on authentic Italian-American cooking. Then it escalated to providing specific recipes in exchange for a monthly retainer. By the most recent email, she was negotiating a $200,000 buyout for exclusive rights to our entire signature menu. 6 months. She had been selling my family's legacy for 6 fucking months while sleeping in my bed and counting our joint profits every night. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed to understand the full scope. I spent the next 2 weeks quietly investigating. What I found was worse than I had imagined. Madison hadn't just been selling to Castellano. She had been running what amounted to a recipe consulting business on the side, using our restaurant's reputation to sell authentic family recipes to 3 different restaurant groups. She was making an extra $8,000 a month that I knew nothing about. But here is the thing that really got me: she was smart about it. She never sold the exact same recipe to multiple buyers. She would modify them slightly, change a few ingredients, adjust the preparation method. To anyone looking from the outside, they were different dishes, but I could see the DNA of my grandmother's cooking in all of them. She had taken my Nana's ragu and sold a simplified version to a casual dining chain. She had modified my family's gnocchi recipe and licensed it to a frozen food company. Recipe after recipe, story after story, she was systematically monetizing my family's culinary heritage without telling me. The worst part, she was good at it, professional. She had created LLC paperwork, had contracts reviewed by lawyers, even set up a separate business bank account. This wasn't some impulsive betrayal. This was a calculated, long-term business strategy. Tonight, I finally confronted her. I laid out everything I had found: the emails, the contracts, the bank statements, showing her side income. Her reaction? Not denial, not apology, annoyance. "Jake, you are being dramatic," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "I have been helping these companies develop authentic Italian dishes. That is just good business." "Using my grandmother's recipes," I said. "Without telling me, our recipes," she corrected. "We are partners. Remember, these recipes have made us both rich. You cannot expect me to turn down opportunities forever, just because your dead grandmother wrote them down first." I sat there for a long moment, looking at this woman I had shared 4 years of my life with, who had built her entire career on my family's foundation. And I realized something. She didn't see what she had done as betrayal. She saw it as business. "Madison," I said quietly, Those aren't just recipes. They are my family's history. My grandmother brought them from Sicily in 1952. She taught them to me when I was 8 years old, standing on a step stool in her kitchen. They are not commodities to be licensed. She rolled her eyes. Jake, that is a beautiful story, but it is just food. Recipes aren't copyrighted. No one owns the rights to pasta sauce. That is when I knew we were done. Not just as business partners, but as people who could ever understand each other. You are right, I told her. You cannot own recipes. But you can own a business, and you can decide who you want to share your life's work with. She looked confused. What is that supposed to mean? It means tomorrow morning, I am calling our lawyer to discuss dissolving the partnership, and I am calling my accountant to figure out how to buy out your share of the restaurant. Now she looked worried. Jake, come on, don't be dramatic. We can work this out. Madison, you have been selling my family's recipes behind my back for 6 months. You set up a separate business to profit off my grandmother's legacy. You don't see anything wrong with that. There is nothing to work out. She tried to backtrack then, talking about how we could create a profit, sharing arrangement for her consulting work, how she had been planning to tell me about the extra income, how we were a team. But I was done listening, because the thing is, this wasn't about money. This was about trust. This was about respect. This was about understanding that some things aren't for sale. Madison built her career on my foundation, and when she thought she was strong enough to stand on her own, she started selling off the blocks I had laid for her. She is upstairs packing now, said she is going to stay with her sister while we figure things out legally. But there is nothing to figure out. Tomorrow I am starting the process of buying her out of the restaurant. It is going to cost me probably $150,000, which is most of my savings. But it is worth it to protect what my grandmother left me. Some things are more valuable than money. Madison never understood that. Reddit. Am I crazy for throwing away a successful partnership over this? Or am I right that some betrayals cannot be forgiven? Update 1. The response to my original post was overwhelming. Thank you to everyone who shared similar experiences. Apparently recipe theft in the restaurant industry is way more common than I realized. So it has been 6 weeks since Madison moved out. And let me tell you, disentangling a business partnership is about as fun as root canal surgery performed by a drunk dentist. First, the good news. I was right about the legal aspects. When Madison and I formalized our partnership 2 years ago, my lawyer had insisted on some protective clauses. Most importantly, while Madison owned 40% of the business profits, I retained 100% ownership of proprietary recipes and culinary intellectual property. Madison's side consulting business was a clear violation of our partnership agreement. She had been using restaurant resources, our reputation, our kitchen for testing, even our supplier relationships to develop her consulting recipes. My lawyer sent her a formal notice that her consulting activities constituted a breach of our partnership agreement, and that I was exercising my right to buy out her share at fair market value. Madison's response. She hired her own lawyer and claimed that the recipes she had been licensing were derivative works based on public domain Italian cooking techniques, and therefore not covered by our partnership agreement. This is where things got complicated. See, Madison isn't stupid. Over the past 6 months of running her consulting business, she had been careful to document her creative process. She had notebooks full of recipe modifications, photos of testing different variations, even video of herself developing dishes that I could clearly see were just variations of my grandmother's recipes. Her lawyer argued that even if she had started with my recipes as inspiration, the work she had done to modify and commercialize them made them legally distinct. They were claiming she had independent intellectual property rights to her versions. My lawyer's response was beautifully savage. He requested discovery of all her consulting contracts and communications. What we found was a pattern of Madison explicitly marketing these recipes as authentic family recipes passed down through generations and traditional Italian dishes perfected over decades. You cannot claim something as both your original creative work and authentic traditional family recipes at the same time. But the real smoking gun was an email she would send to Castellano Restaurant Group where she wrote, "The beauty of these recipes is that they are not just authentic, they are the exact formulations that have made Nonna's Table Portland's most successful Italian restaurant. You will be licensing proven winners." She would literally been selling our restaurant's success as her value proposition. The legal process is slow, but it is moving in the right direction. Madison's trying to delay everything, probably hoping I will run out of money for legal fees. But I am not backing down. Meanwhile, running the restaurant without her has been interesting. I had to take over all the social media and marketing work, which I hate. Our Instagram followers dropped by about 20% when people realized Madison wasn't posting anymore. A few food bloggers who were friends with Madison stopped featuring us, but something unexpected happened. Without Madison's polished, influencer-style content, our social media became more authentic. I started posting simple photos of dishes with the actual stories behind them. Pictures of my grandmother's handwritten recipe cards, videos of me making pasta the way she taught me. Our local customer base has actually grown. Turns out people appreciate authenticity over Instagram aesthetics. The hardest part has been the personal side. 4 years is a long time to be with someone, even if the last 6 months were built on lies. I have had to work through feeling like an idiot for not seeing what she was doing sooner. But every time I doubt myself, I think about that conversation where she called my grandmother's recipes just food and said no one owns pasta sauce. She never understood that recipes aren't just lists of ingredients. They are stories. They are love. They are connection to the people who came before us. Madison saw dollar signs. I see my grandmother's hands teaching mine how to roll gnocchi. That is the difference between us, and that is why this partnership had to end. Next update, the discovery process, and what we found in Madison's consulting business records. Spoiler alert, it is worse than I thought. Update 2. I know it has been a while since my last update. The legal process moves at the speed of cold molasses, but we have finally gotten through discovery, and I can share what we found. Holy shit, you guys. Madison's consulting business was way more extensive than I had realized. Over the past 18 months, not 6 months like I originally thought, she had been running what amounted to a recipe laundering operation. Here is how it worked. Madison would take one of my grandmother's recipes and create multiple variations. She had tested these variations in our restaurant kitchen during off-hours, document the process like she was developing original content, then sell these new recipes to different companies. My grandmother's ragu recipe became the basis for at least 7 different signature sauces sold to various restaurant chains. Her gnocchi recipe was modified and licensed to 3 different companies. Her wedding soup recipe, the one that made our restaurant famous, was sold to a meal kit company as Madison's traditional Italian wedding soup. But here is the part that really got me. Madison had been keeping meticulous records of everything. Not for legal protection, but for business expansion. She had been planning to scale this operation. We found a business plan in her files titled Heritage Recipe Consulting LLC 5-Year Growth Strategy. Her goal was to build a portfolio of 50-plus licensed recipes across 20-plus restaurant groups, generating $500 K-Fe annual revenue. She was planning to systematically monetize every single recipe in my family's collection. The business plan included a section called Source Material Acquisition, where she had mapped out relationships with other chef owners she could potentially partner with to access their family recipes. I wasn't her first target. I was her proof of concept. My lawyer called it one of the most systematic cases of culinary intellectual property theft he had ever seen. But Madison's lawyers kept fighting. They argued that recipes cannot be owned, that food is cultural heritage, that I was trying to monopolize Italian, American cooking techniques. That is when we found the smoking gun, an internal email Madison sent to herself outlining her strategy. The key is to maintain plausible deniability while maximizing monetization. As long as I can document a development process for each variation, I can claim independent creative rights. Jake is too sentimental about his grandmother's legacy to see the business opportunity. By the time he figures out what I am doing, I will have enough licensing deals in place to make it financially impossible for him to challenge me. She had been planning this from the beginning. Our entire relationship, our business partnership, my trust, it was all just infrastructure for her long-term recipe theft operation. The case settled 2 weeks ago. Madison agreed to immediately terminate all licensing agreements using recipes derived from my family's collection. Then, pay damages of $180,000, representing her estimated profits from the consulting business next. Sign a non-compete agreement preventing her from consulting in the Italian, American restaurant space for 5 years. and publicly acknowledge that the recipes in question originated from my family's collection. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue criminal fraud charges. Madison's consulting business is dead. The restaurant chains that had licensed her recipes either dropped them or are facing potential lawsuits from me if they continue using them. But the personal cost has been huge. The legal fees ate up most of my savings. I had to take out a loan against the restaurant to cover the buyout of Madison's partnership share. Running the restaurant solo while dealing with the lawsuit nearly broke me. There were nights I had closed the kitchen at 11 p.m., then spend hours working on legal documents until 3 a.m. I lost weight. I lost sleep. I lost faith in my ability to judge people's character. But I also found something I didn't expect: peace. Every dish I serve now feels authentic in a way it didn't when Madison was involved. When I make my grandmother's ragu, I am not wondering if someone is photographing it for a consulting pitch. When I teach a new cook how to make gnocchi, I am sharing knowledge, not creating intellectual property. The restaurant is smaller now, just me and 2 full-time cooks instead of Madison's grand expansion plans. But it is profitable, it is honest, and it is mine. Last week, I framed my grandmother's original recipe for her wedding soup. It hangs in the kitchen where every cook can see it. Not as a trade secret, but as a reminder of why we do this work. Food is love, recipes are stories. Some things are worth protecting even when it costs you everything. Final update: it has been 8 months since Madison moved out of my house and my business. Time for the final chapter of this story. The legal settlement is complete. Madison paid the damages in monthly installments. Apparently her consulting business collapse left her pretty financially strained. The restaurant is fully mine now, debt-free as of last month. Madison tried to restart her career in Denver, according to mutual friends. She launched a food blog called Authentic Eats and was trying to build a new following. But the food world is smaller than people think, and word travels fast about recipe theft. Her blog never gained traction. Last I heard, she had moved back to her hometown in Ohio and was working as a marketing coordinator for a local business. Not food-related. I don't feel vindictive about that anymore. Just tired. 4 years of my life with someone who saw my family's legacy as raw material for her business plan. The restaurant has found its rhythm without her. We are not the social media darling we were when Madison was posting daily. But we are busier than ever. Turns out authentic Italian. American food speaks for itself when you are not trying to turn every dish into content. I hired Maria, a 28-year-old chef who grew up in her grandmother's Mexican kitchen. She understands what family recipes mean. When I taught her my nana's techniques, she shared some of her abuela's methods. It has been like having a conversation across generations and cultures. 3 months ago, I started teaching occasional cooking classes on weekend afternoons. Nana's kitchen, traditional Italian, American cooking. It was Maria's idea, she said. The recipes were too precious to keep locked away. The classes fill up weeks in advance. I teach people how to make real ragu, how to roll gnocchi by hand, how to build flavors the way my grandmother taught me. At the end of each class, I tell the stories how Nana came to America with nothing but hope and recipes, how food became her way of caring for people. One woman in the class started crying when I demonstrated the pasta making technique my grandmother taught me when I was 8. My Nana did the same thing, she said. I thought I had forgotten how. That is what Madison never understood. These recipes aren't commodities to be optimized and monetized. They are connections. They are love made tangible. I am dating someone now. Her name is Elena, and she is a public school teacher. She came to one of my cooking classes 6 months ago and stayed after to help clean up. We got to talking about family traditions, about the recipes our grandmothers shared with us. When I told her the story about Madison and the recipe theft, she said something that stuck with me. Some people see tradition as something to preserve, and some people see it as something to exploit. You can usually tell which kind of person someone is by how they treat other people's stories. Elena has never asked me for my recipes, even though we have been together for 4 months. She helps in the kitchen sometimes, and I have started teaching her some of my grandmother's techniques, but she always asks first, and she listens to the stories behind them. Last week, she brought me a handwritten recipe card from her own grandmother, a simple recipe for Mexican wedding cookies that her family has been making for 3 generations. I thought maybe you would like to try making them, she said. My grandmother always said food tastes better when it is shared with love. I made the cookies yesterday using Elena's grandmother's recipe. They were perfect sweet, delicate, full of history. I am thinking of adding them to our dessert menu as a special, with a note about Elena's family and the tradition of sharing recipes across cultures. Madison would have seen that recipe and immediately started calculating how to monetize it. Elena shared it because she trusted me with something precious. That is the difference between building something together and taking what you want. The restaurant is thriving. My grandmother's recipes are still feeding people, still carrying forward her love and traditions. Maria is developing into a wonderful chef, and Elena brings joy to my life in ways I forgot were possible. I keep my grandmother's original recipe cards in a frame by the kitchen pass now, not locked away, but visible. A reminder of where we came from and why we do this work. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never found those emails. If Madison had been more careful about hiding her consulting business, would she have eventually owned more of my family's legacy than I did? But then I remember something my grandmother used to say: the truth has a way of rising to the surface. Like cream in fresh milk. You cannot keep it down forever. Madison thought she could build an empire on stolen recipes. Instead, she lost everything: the business, the relationship, the reputation, the trust. I thought I was fighting to protect recipes. Turns out I was fighting to protect something much more important. The right to honor the people who came before us. The right to say no when someone tries to turn your love into their profit. My grandmother's recipes are still here, still feeding people, still carrying her stories forward. Madison's consulting business is gone. The lawsuits are over. The restaurant is mine. Some things are worth fighting for. Some things cannot be bought or sold or optimized or branded. Some things are just love, passed down through generations, one recipe at a time.